Like, what exactly would that look like? So, anyway, this is the Times Radio on YouTube. NATO unlikely to survive Trump's threatened Greenland takeover. So what you're telling me is if Trump does take over Greenland, they're going to get kicked out of NATO. But also if Trump leaves NATO, or if the U.S. leaves NATO, then NATO probably won't survive that. That's interesting. Okay, well, anyway, this is their video on YouTube. Definitely go subscribe. Definitely check out the original video. It'll be linked to my in my video. While you're there on YouTube, go ahead, if you're watching my video, go ahead and hit subscribe on there. It's just a small button. That'd be awesome. That'd be nice. We don't have very many, but that's okay. I'm fine talking to myself for a little while.
What I make of it is it's absolutely unprecedented and extraordinary stuff. All this stuff from Stephen Miller about, what right does Denmark have to Greenland is just deflecting. And trying to change the subject, because there's no question about Danish sovereignty over Greenland, although Greenland may have long-term aspirations to some form of independence. But it's still very difficult for someone with a background of 40-odd years in diplomacy to imagine how in a state where one NATO country, effectively the leader of NATO, is effectively threatening military action against another NATO country, against an ally, over its wish to basically...
He's not at all threatening military action. He's not saying that it's off the table, though, because why the hell would he do that? That would literally get rid of all of the leverage that the U.S. has. No. We want to actually try and buy it this time.
Grab a piece of that country's territory.
Britain and France have committed to deploying troops to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. They've signed a declaration of intent after a meeting in Paris of 35 countries in the so-called Coalition of the Willing.
Good. Now we can invade Greenland militarily, because I don't think Britain and France are big enough to actually support two sustained war efforts, especially not against two large countries like Russia and the United States.
Usually, the US will agree to support the force if it is attacked, according to a draft statement. Sir Keir Starmer set out the plan for military hubs across Ukraine.
It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future. We discussed these issues.
I do not give a fuck about Ukraine at all.
In detail today, and so I can say that following a ceasefire, the UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine and build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment to support Ukraine's defensive needs.
Well, Sir Keir said a peace deal could only be agreed if Russia makes compromises, and he warned that President Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace. The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who was there at the talks, said President Trump strongly stands behind the security arrangements.
We think we're largely finished with security protocols, which are important so that the people of Ukraine know that when this ends, it ends forever. But we also think, critically, that we are very, very close to finishing up as robust a prosperity agreement as any country has ever seen coming out of conflicts like this.
Good fucking deal, man. Listen, I don't give a shit about Ukraine, but I don't want there to be a sustained war anywhere, okay? Loss of lives is a tragedy no matter where the hell it is. I really want everything to be handled in a diplomatic manner, maybe buying it, maybe them just electing it, or electing to be part of whichever country that they want. But I'm also a realist. I understand that countries fail, and whenever they fail, somebody needs to swoop in and start taking care of those citizens and own the land after that, right? So, I mean, yeah.
It will aspirationally mean large possibilities for the Ukrainian people.
Well, in the last hour, the White House has made another statement on Greenland, saying that President Trump and his team are discussing a range of methods for acquiring Greenland, adding that this is a national security priority of the United States and that military force would always be an option at Trump's disposal. Let's talk to Lord Darroch, a former British ambassador to the US and a former national security advisor. Good evening to you, Lord Darroch.
Evening, Carol.
Well, my goodness, so much to talk about. Let me start with that agreement, the words we heard there from the Prime Minister, that Britain and France are now committed to deploying troops to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal, setting up those military hubs. I mean, what do you make of that plan?
This has been under negotiation for a while, and agreement is what you would have expected after all of the work that's gone into it. It's right that the UK and France should be effectively leading on this as the two major military powers in Europe. And from the sound of it, it's all quite well worked out and worked through. But, Carol, as has just been said, I think, by the Prime Minister, there is no evidence yet that Putin is prepared to make any concessions at all to Ukraine to achieve a peace deal. I mean, his position is absolutely maximalist and not a basis, I think, for a deal to be reached. So we may well still be a long, long way from any point at which any such force might be deployed.
Yeah, because the key point here is that no one is talking about the British, French or any other forces going in and taking on the Russian forces. This is after a peace deal, which is still a long way off. But the crucial thing in all of this is those US security guarantees, isn't it?
It is, and it was always a European demand that the Americans should be behind this reassurance force in some way. However, all I've heard so far is the words US support. And what exactly is the nature of that support is a rather important question. I mean, is it...
We are not going to put boots on the ground and fight your wars for you. Deal with your own shit in your own hemisphere.
Is it the possibility...
You're lucky we're giving you weapons and money.
...of, offensive, US military air support if the Russians were to cross any lines, or what exactly does it amount to? So it'll be important to know those details. Much more important for the Ministry of Defence and for British and French governments, of course, than for me. But this is kind of a crucial point. Exactly what is that support?
And, of course, while you've got the British and French and other leaders saying that they're relying on US support on this, we've got the White House once again ramping up the pressure over Greenland. I mean, let's just first of all have a reminder of what the US Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller has said.
He said no one would stop us, and he's right.
When he was speaking about this to CNN.
The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having...
That's fair. There is no basis. They just kind of got it given to them over time.
Greenland is a colony of Denmark. The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. And so that's a conversation that we're going to have. There's no need to even think or talk about this in the context that you're asking of a military operation. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
And we've now had that statement essentially doubling down on US claims on Greenland, saying that that President Trump and his team are discussing a range of methods, that it's a national security priority, and that the use of military force would always be an option. I mean, what do you make of that?
What I make of it...
Listen. It's just a bunch of truths, all right? They're hitting you with facts. They're hitting you with the real world fucking life, man.
It's absolutely unprecedented.
Yes, it is, and it's glorious.
And extraordinary stuff. All this stuff from Stephen Miller about, what right does Denmark have to Greeceland is just deflecting. And
it's not deflecting. Denmark has no claim over it whatsoever. I believe the only reason that they have it is because they got it given to them by some sort of organization after some treaties were resolved and like some nation collapsed or some shit. Like, it was literally just given to them.
I'm trying to change the subject because there's no question about Danish sovereignty over Greenland, although Greenland may have long-term...
Yeah, sure. No, listen. Denmark has sovereignty over Greenland. The question is why?
Aspirations to some form of independence. But it's still very difficult for someone with a background of 40-odd years in diplomacy to imagine how in a state where one NATO...
Now who's deflecting, guy? Huh? Yeah.
Country, effectively the leader of NATO, is effectively threatening military action against another NATO country, against an ally.
Guys trying to blame other people for deflecting, and then he keeps going, well, this is effectively what this is doing.
Over its wish to basically grab a piece of that country's territory. I mean, it's really, if it weren't happening, you simply wouldn't believe that this were possible. So these are unprecedented times. Look, the only thing that I can say is potentially a little bit hopeful about this, because what we're talking about, if this was ever to happen, is I think the collapse, the destruction of NATO. Is Trump is a ruthless businessman and negotiates through threat and intimidation and bluster. And
you have not read The Art of the Deal, but okay, sure.
All of this stuff about,
That's his foreign policy stance, and honestly, it's because he has to take a strong stance for America, and it's just not really something that particularly older European politicians are really comfortable or used to seeing, because it's usually been, America is the global power, and so we feel bad that we're better than you, and so we're just going to give you free shit. But that's not the way that it is anymore, and it really bothers these people that used to be in the governments of these other European countries.
Well, of course, the military option is on the table. Maybe just a way of trying to intimidate and bully Denmark into making some concessions and making an offer. I think it's absolutely fair for the Americans to say that Greenland is strategically very important in these troubled times. But they already got a military force on Greenland territory, and I think they could put as many American soldiers onto Greenland if they asked permission from Denmark as they wanted. So they can deploy everything they want there without actually taking...
Yeah, he's not explaining to you why we can do that. See, here's the thing. Greenland is a self-governing territory, meaning... Denmark doesn't actually do anything to govern them. Greenland does all that shit themselves. They use Danish currencies and are subject to Danish laws and stuff, but other than that, they pretty much govern themselves. They're essentially a state, a lot like one of the states in the United States. Second, Denmark does not even guarantee their security militarily. The United States does. So the U.S. is allowed to put as many fucking troops in Greenland as they want. Not because of this Don Roe doctrine, although that does, give it some sort of illegitimacy. Anyway, we can put as many troops in there as we want because we are responsible for the military protection of Greenland already. And it makes no sense that we are if we don't own Greenland. Sorry, Denmark, but if you're not going to fucking do anything, we will.
It over. So,
and we had this statement, didn't we, earlier? And we had this statement earlier in the day, sorry to interrupt you, from Britain, France, other European leaders utterly rejecting US claims on Greenland, saying that this is a matter for the people of Greenland and of Denmark, because Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, to decide. But I mean, if the US were to do this, were to try somehow by force to seize Greenland.
Fuck Denmark too, honestly. Like I don't know that they're a regime, but they're definitely a very small country.
And do you think that, as we heard the warnings before, and as you've referred to, that this would be the end of NATO because it would pit one NATO member against another?
Yeah, it's hard to see for me how NATO could survive if this had actually happened, because you would have European members of NATO, plus I suspect Canada, thinking about what they need to do to what...
Canada's got its own fucking problems, guy. They're about to become part of the United States just by, voting for it. They...
would be another illegal under international law action by the United States, but this time not against a corrupt dictatorship. This time against a democratically elected NATO ally, and that's just it's literally inconceivable, which makes me.
Doesn't Denmark have a king? Pretty sure Denmark has a king. I don't think that kings are democratically elected.
Maybe it's a forlorn hope. Makes you just wonder if this isn't just a negotiating tactic to try and
It's like saying the Queen of England was democratically elected. No.
Squeeze some more concessions out of Denmark. Also, the timeline of sometime in the next 3 years gives you quite a long time for negotiating some way forward that could involve, more American troops on Greenland, more American military installations or whatever. But, these are extraordinary times, and you can't really rule anything out. And the fact that European leaders have felt motivated to make this statement shows how much concern there is around Europe.
Lord Darragh, former British ambassador to the US, former national security advisor, really good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Oh boy, that's the crazy shit that the US is doing right now, and honestly, I'm so fucking here for it. I am absolutely here for all of the American expansion. I've been calling for it for a long time. I'm not riding anybody's coattails on this. They're riding mine, if I'm being completely honest. They just have larger voices than me. But that's okay, because 2026 is going to be our year. 2026 is going to be the year that we make tens of fans on this channel, damn it. Yeah, alright? You watch. We're going to do it, damn it. Anyway, definitely follow and subscribe. Definitely, if you're on YouTube, go to youtube.com/Sestill/G2D. That's right. If you are tired of YouTube, you can always go to Rumble, and you can go to rumble.com/Sestill. And you can also follow me on X at real_Sestill. And you're already here on Kick, so that's really cool. Definitely go to Kick and follow me for weekly streams. All of these videos are streamed weekly, once or twice a week on Kick. Come and see me live. Come say hi. I can't wait to hear from you guys. And I hope you have a good next couple of days. I will see you on Sunday. Bye.